Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hopefully everyone can see the screen okay. So it's quite, verses 5, 6, and 7 all together, and it's quite long, but really beautiful. So I'd like to try my best to recite the Sanskrit, and then we will just read the English translation, and we'll read the purport. Pitamaha me samare maranjayer deva vratadya tirathes timingile duratyayam kaurava shainya sagaram kritva taran vatsapadam smayat plavaha Dronyastra viplustam idam madangam santana bijam kuru pandavanam jugopa kukshim gata atachakro matushcha me yaha sharanam gatayaha Viryani tasya khila deha bhajam antarbahi purushakala rupahe prayachyato mrityumuttamritam cha maya manushyasya vadasva vidvan. Translation. This is Parikshit Maharaj speaking. Taking the boat of Krishna's lotus feet, my grandfather Arjuna and others crossed the ocean of the battlefield of Kurukshetra, in which such commanders as Bhishma Dev resembled great fish that could very easily have swallowed them. By the mercy of Lord Krishna, my grandfathers crossed this ocean, which was very difficult to cross, as easily as one steps over the hoofprint of a calf. Because my mother surrendered unto Lord Krishna's lotus feet, the Lord, Sudarshan Chakra in hand, entered her womb and saved my body. The body of the last remaining descendant of the Kurus and the Pandavas, which was almost destroyed by the fiery weapon of Ashwatthama. Lord Sri Krishna, appearing within and outside of all materially embodied living beings by his own potency in the forms of eternal time, that is, as Paramatma and as the Virata Rup, gave liberation to everyone, either as cruel death or as life. Kindly enlighten me by describing his transcendental characteristics. Srila Prabhupada's purport. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, Samashita ye padapallava pallavam Mahat padam punya yasho murarehe bhavam buddhir vatsa padam param padam padam yad vipadam natesham. Very famous, beloved verse. For one who has accepted the boat of the lotus feet of the Lord, who is the shelter of the cosmic manifestation, and is famous as Murari, or the enemy of the Mura demon, the ocean of the material world is like the water contained in a calf's hoofprint. His goal is Parampadam, or Vaikuntha, the place where there are no more material miseries, not the place where there is danger at every step. One who seeks shelter at the lotus feet of Lord Krishna is immediately protected by the Lord. As the Lord promises in Bhagavad Gita 1866, Aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma shuchaha. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions, do not fear. By taking shelter of Lord Krishna, one comes under the safest protection. Thus, when the Pandavas took shelter at the lotus feet of Krishna, all of them were on the safe side of the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Parikshit Maharaj therefore felt obliged to think of Krishna in the last days of his life. This is the ideal result of Krishna consciousness. Ante Narayana Smriti. If at the time of death one can remember Krishna, one's life is successful. Parikshit Maharaj, therefore, because of his many obligations to Krishna, intelligently decided to think of Krishna constantly during the last days of his life. Krishna had saved the Pandavas, Maharaj Parikshit's grandfathers, on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and Krishna had saved Maharaj Parikshit himself when he was attacked by the Brahmastra of Ashwatthama. Krishna acted as the friend and worshipable deity of the Pandava family. Moreover, apart from Lord Krishna's personal contact with the Pandavas, Krishna is the supersoul of all living entities, and he gives everyone liberation, even if one is not a pure devotee. Kamsa, for example, was not at all a devotee, yet Krishna, after killing him, gave him salvation. Krishna consciousness is beneficial to everyone, whether one is a pure devotee or a non-devotee. This is the glory of Krishna consciousness. Considering this, who will not take shelter at the lotus feet of Krishna? Krishna is described in this verse as Maya Manushya, because he descends exactly like a human being. He is not obliged to come here like karmis or ordinary living beings. Rather, he appears by his own internal energy, Sambhavami Atma Mayaya, just to show favor to the fallen conditioned souls. Krishna is always situated in his original position as Satchid Ananda Vigraha, and anyone who renders service to him is also situated in his original spiritual identity, Swarupena Vyavastitihi. This is the highest perfection of human life. Wow. Om Agyantimirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurung Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajataham Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitangscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Brindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Panchakalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. This morning we're reading from the beginning of the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam. And as other speakers have commented on, this is the introduction or the ramp up, so to speak, for Shukadev Goswami to finally, after this wonderful building of a foundation, finally to speak on the pastimes, especially the Vrindavan pastimes, the Vrajalila of Sri Krishna. who is the supreme object of devotion and adoration of the Bhagavatam. So it's quite a momentous thing. And in the build-up, Parikshit Maharaj is in these wonderful passages. Parikshit Maharaj is both glorifying Krishna as well as expressing his eagerness to hear. Speakers like when their audience members, or when the listener, the hearer, is very obviously enthusiastic to hear, it enlivens the speaker. And so Parikshit Maharaj, he's so excited, he's so eager to hear about Krishna, and he, just to enthuse Shukadev Goswami and to relish the experience of hearing of Krishna, he's meditating on Krishna and Krishna's qualities, and he's asking Shukadev Goswami to please describe that personality who has such wonderful, super excellent, incomparable characteristics. Now, Krishna has, our acharyas explain, he actually has an unlimited, it's impossible to enumerate Krishna's qualities. Sometimes we see lists, Krishna has the 64 qualities of Krishna or something like this. But these lists are meant to facilitate our meditation and our appreciation, but they're not exhaustive lists. They're not, one can never find the limit to Krishna's qualities. But even with an unlimited, innumerable, infinite list of qualities or characteristics, our acharyas give us this wonderful indication that there is one quality, one characteristic which rises above the rest. Of course, all of his characteristics, all of his qualities are absolute. So it's meant in the spirit of appreciation and glorification. We shouldn't take it too literally. But our acharyas, particularly Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, explain that there is one quality of Krishna which is considered the crest jewel of all of his qualities. And this is the quality that Parikshit Maharaj is especially glorifying and zeroing in on in these passages that we're looking at this morning. And that quality, that characteristic, is referred to as the Lord's nature, or the Lord's being glorified as Bhaktavatsa, one who is exceedingly affectionate and cares for his devotees. This quality, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, stands as the crest jewel. Crest jewel means all of the other qualities are also admirable, worshipable, but this Bhaktavatsal quality, it is so beautiful that it enhances the beauty of all the other qualities. We can see all the other qualities of Krishna even more. We can appreciate them even more just by appreciating this quality of the Lord as Bhaktavatsal. So we'll talk a little bit about that in just a few minutes. But before we do that, let's look at the particular examples that Parikshit Maharaj gives. He gives 3 examples here, 3 illustrations of the Lord's Bhaktavatsal nature. 2 of these are very, very personal to him, and one is very hope-giving to the rest of us, because and Srila Prabhupada comments on this in the purport. We won't focus so much on this, but just to mention it, that how wonderful is Krishna, that even if one is thinking, well, he's very affectionate to his devotees, but what about everyone else? Parikshit Maharaj says, no, even in the broadest sense, even in his most universal form as Virat Rup, or as Kala Rupa, as time, or as Paramatma, who's within the soul of, what to speak of, every human being, every living entity. Even in this respect, the Lord is Bhaktavatsal. Even in this respect, the Lord is always caring for, protecting, and saving all living beings, all of his children. So he gives these 2 personal examples or personal illustrations, and then this third, more, I don't want to say generic, because that makes it sound somehow less, less glorious, but more universal. Now, the first two are the more personal ones. One of them, of course, is Parikshit Maharaj himself. Parikshit Maharaj was saved in the womb of his mother, Uttara, by the Lord appearing there personally. Of course, the Lord is present as Supersoul, as Paramatma, but this is something that goes even beyond the Paramatma feature of the Lord, where the Lord appears personally with his Sudarshan Chakra to protect his devotee before his devotee is even born, while his devotee is still within the womb. So this is Parikshit Maharaj's own lived experience. It's quite an extraordinary story, but Parikshit Maharaj is drawing from his own experience. He says, "Look, I know this is a fact. I know that this is the most wonderful quality of the Lord because I'm the recipient of it. I've benefited from it. As Prabhupada mentions in the purport, I am indebted." Parikshit Maharaj is feeling, I've been the beneficiary of Krishna's protection. I'm so indebted to him. So who else can I turn to? Who else can I think of, especially at this time, this crucial time? And then the main example he gives, and he does it so beautifully, using this imagery that we see elsewhere in the Bhagavatam of crossing an ocean. Excuse me. He speaks about his grandfather, Arjuna, and the other Pandavas, and how the Lord, at that most dangerous of situations, that most unimaginably challenging situation of the Battle of Kurukshetra, the Lord personally protected and, as Parikshit Maharaj says, carried over the Pandavas. And very poetically, Parikshit Maharaj compares the battlefield of Kurukshetra to a vast ocean. Just as the Bhagavatam compares, and other Shastra, other scriptures often will use this metaphor of the ocean to speak about samsara, the world of birth and death, the material world. They'll talk about it as the material ocean, a great vast ocean, a limitless, seemingly limitless ocean of repeated birth and death. In a similar way, very poetically, Parikshit Maharaj compares the battlefield to a vast ocean, right? We can only imagine just a scene where, as far as the eye can see, just like when you're in the middle of the ocean, you can't even see land sometimes. If you've ever, been on like a ship or something like that, like a cruise ship or something, and at certain times you're just in the middle of the ocean, it feels like it will go on infinitely. You can't even see just even an indication of any land, of any shore. So like that, the battlefield, we can only imagine, must have seemed like a great ocean without a shore in sight, without any break from just chariots and elephants and horses and weaponry and soldiers, great warriors everywhere as far as the eye could see. And not only that, but Parikshit Maharaj even more poetically adds to the metaphor, and he says, this is not just an ocean in terms of its vastness, but it's also a dangerous ocean because there are these big fish, these great fish we can imagine, like whales or sharks, right? These like massive, even bigger. And who are these in the analogy or in the metaphor? He says they're the great warriors like Bhishma Dev, like Dronacharya. These formidable warriors that the Pandavas, as great as they were, as much prowess and skill as they had, they were humbled. Factually, they were humbled, right? Dronacharya was their teacher. So as powerful as they were, Dronacharya was the one who taught them. And Bhishma Dev was such a formidable warrior. And it was well known that Bhishma Dev had the mystic boon by the power of his austerity, by the power of his commitment to his vows, he was personally blessed and benedicted with these great boons, including the boon that he would be the one to choose his moment of death. So practically speaking, invincible. So these are the enemies, the so-called enemies or opponents, we can say, that the Pandavas are facing. And Parikshit Maharaj is recalling all of this, right? We can imagine maybe Parikshit Maharaj as a boy, he probably grew up hearing these stories of his illustrious grandfathers and of the battlefield. But the story is not just who was strongest in the battle. As Parikshit Maharaj says, the story really is of who was blessed and protected and carried over. So Srila Prabhupada says the Pandavas were certainly on the right side of the battlefield, the correct side, the winning side, the victorious side, not because they outnumbered the Kauravas. They actually didn't. They were, I don't recall the numbers. I have some friends who are scholars of the Mahabharata, and they could tell you all of the specific numbers of how many, soldiers, and they have all these ways of measuring in the Mahabharata, akshahinis and all this stuff. I don't know all these numbers, but the Mahabharata really is very clear, makes it very clear, even giving the numbers, that the Kauravas far, far outnumbered the Pandavas. It wasn't even a contest. When you looked at just the numbers, when you looked at the resources, the Kauravas had more resources. When you looked at practically any measure from a material standpoint, right? If you were looking at it as a contest and just looking at it in terms of the odds or the numbers, the Kauravas were slated to be victorious by any count. But when we look at it from a spiritual point of view, when we look at it from the point of view of blessing, when we look at it from the point of view of the Lord's protection, of his quality as Bhaktavatsa, then it's very clear that the Pandavas are victorious. In fact, Parikshit Maharaj here again uses that wonderful metaphor of the ocean, and he says, not only were they carried over by the boat, he poetically or metaphorically compares Lord Krishna's lotus feet to a very powerful boat that carries one over an ocean. He says, not only were they carried over the ocean by the boat of the lotus feet of Krishna, but the ocean itself, so vast, so intimidating, so overwhelming, was in the experience of the Pandavas, became like the experience of crossing over that ocean became like the experience of stepping over a small puddle, a puddle that's contained in the hoof print of a calf. If you've ever been like in Vrindavan or some other agricultural place or a farm, if you've ever seen like a hoof print of a cow or a calf, even smaller, it makes like an indentation in the soft ground or the mud. And then if there's some rainfall or some water, it just kind of pools in that indentation. But it's used in both this analogy or this metaphor, as well as in the more well-known version of it that is found in the I think first canto of the Bhagavatam. No, actually, I'm sorry, I misspoke. Also in the 10th canto, later in the 10th canto. In either version, the idea is the water. What is the amount of water that can be contained in the hoofprint of a calf? It's practically negligible, and if you're trying to cross it, you don't even think twice. You don't plan how you're going to do it. You don't get an anxiety. You don't worry about it. You just practically, without missing a beat, you just step over it. And so this becomes the experience of the Pandavas. Now it's interesting when you think about a boat carrying over, and then we'll get back to this Bhaktavatsa piece. But when you think of a boat carrying someone over an ocean, it's not necessarily that the dangers of the ocean have magically been eliminated. It's not that the dangers of the ocean are no longer present. The waves are still there. They're still choppy. The vastness of the ocean is still there. The sharks and whales and these massive fish and other perhaps deadly beings might still be there, but the boat affords safety and protection. The experience of being in a boat and carried over through the efforts of the boat, through the strength and stability and protection of the boat, is fundamentally different than the experience of having to swim across that ocean, having to depend on our own strength, our own abilities. And so, in a similar way, Lord Krishna is glorified not because he magically makes his devotees' lives easier, or that, by snapping his finger, he eliminates all challenges and shortcomings and obstacles and hindrances in their lives. Quite the opposite. We see the Bhagavatam, the pages of the Bhagavatam are filled with great devotees who must face many, many challenges, many calamities. They're still there. They still come in the lives of great devotees. Even the Pandavas, who Parikshit Maharaj is giving the example of, they had to face, even after the battle of Kurukshetra, they still had to face challenges. So it's not that the challenges disappear, but that the Lord, in his affection for his devotees, he says, in effect, you do not have to face these challenges alone. You don't have to depend on your abilities, your strength, your resources. Take shelter of me. Come seek refuge in me. He famously says in the Bhagavad Gita, and Srila Prabhupada quotes this in the purport, this verse that's often considered the final and most important instruction given in the Gita in 1866. He says, Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja. Make me your only refuge. Just depend on me. Don't worry about anything else. Don't be concerned with anything else. Make me your exclusive refuge. Mam ekam sharanam vraja. Come to me. Accept this refuge that I'm offering you, single-mindedly, with a single heart, a single mind. And then what is the outcome of that? Aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma shuchaha. He says, I will protect you from any and all dangers, sin, hindrances, obstacles. I will protect you from all of that. He says, ma shuchaha, have no fear, have no worry. This is the wonderful quality of the Lord as Bhaktavatsa, as Achyuta, as one who is infallible, who never fails. Never fails in what way? Never fails, as our acharyas explain, in his affection, in his care, in his promise to uplift and shelter and protect his devotees. This quality of Bhaktavatsal, I just want to, we have just a few minutes left, but I want to really dig a little bit deeper into this quality of Krishna as Bhaktavatsal. Bhaktavatsal, the word or the phrase, it's combined as a combination of two words, Bhakta and Vatsal. Bhakta means devotee, of course, and Vatsal refers to the Lord's affection, but it's a very particular kind of affection. In fact, this word Vatsal is connected to the idea of parental affection. So one way of understanding Bhakta Vatsal is we can translate it as the Lord who is affectionate to his devotees just as a parent is affectionate to the child. So it's the Lord being affectionate, being protective over his devotees in just that same mood that a parent is affectionate and protective over especially a very young, vulnerable child. So this is the Lord as Bhaktavatsal. We see this in story after story. We don't have time, unfortunately, but there's so many pastimes we can think of. Gajendra Moksha Lila, where the Lord rescues Gajendra. The Lord rescues Draupadi from being disrobed and dishonored. So many examples. The Lord protects the residents of Vrindavan from the torrential rainstorm of Indra. He also protects Indra. Our acharyas offer this nice commentary that not only is the Lord Bhaktavatsal to the Vrajavasis, but he's Bhaktavatsal to Indra too, because by enacting this pastime, he humbles Indra and he protects Indra from the greatest danger, which is false pride. He humbles Indra, but he does it in the spirit of correcting his beloved child, his devotee. So many examples of the Lord as Bhaktavatsal in this mood of a parent. Now, another way of understanding Bhaktavatsal, not a different way, but another dimension to this, is the word Vatsal is also very much related to the relationship, not just between a parent and a child, but between a mother cow and her calf. The word Vatsa is a word that's used for calf. So like we're evoking the idea of the hoof print of a calf. So also Vatsa is a calf. It shows up in this verse. And Bhakta Vatsala means the Lord who is, just like the mother cow, protecting and caring for her calf. So if you've ever seen the relationship between the cow and the calf, I remember we were at the Govardhan Eco Village. I was with a group of students. It's been a couple of years now because of the pandemic. We haven't been able to go, but maybe 2-3 years ago. And one of the highlights of the visit for all the students was spending time in the Goshala. And there was a newborn calf. And if you've ever seen a newborn calf, it wasn't exactly newborn. It was maybe like a couple of weeks old. But so, I mean, just adorable. It's one of the most heart melting sights. I mean, you could just see these students were like practically in tears by how beautiful this small, delicate, very loving calf, how this calf appeared. So all the students wanted to embrace the calf and wanted to pet the calf and play with the calf. And so we were doing that. We were spending some time with the calf, and almost out of nowhere, breaking from the rest of this herd, the calf's mother just came like powerfully. And if you've ever seen cows, if you ever spend time with cows, they're beautiful, but they're quite powerful, large creatures, right? They're not, sometimes we imagine them as being, these small cuddly creatures. But cows are quite large in size and quite powerful when they want to be. And this mother cow, she came out like a dragon, fierce, and just, all the students just kind of like, it was a little scary. We all, our group just sort of quickly, went back and kind of like hid behind the cowherd devotees there. And they explained that the mother is just so protective over her calf. So the mother protects her calf. She also, and this is commented on by some of the acharyas, particularly in the Sri Vaishnava tradition, the mother cow, she cleans her calf very carefully, even when the calf is just born and is covered with so much, mucus and so many substances. Sometimes the calf becomes covered by dirt and straw, mud. The cow very without hesitating, very lovingly and very joyfully cleans the calf by licking the calf. And so the acharyas in the Sri Vaishnava tradition, they explain that the Lord Hari, he's just like that. He's one of the meanings of Hari is one who steals away, who takes away all that is inauspicious, all that is impure. He doesn't just expect us to do it or demand that we do it, that you purify yourself, you make yourself fit, you remove anything inauspicious, anything impure, any fault, and then you come before me. But like a cow cleaning the mother calf, or rather the mother cow, cleaning her calf, the Lord himself willingly, he steals away, he takes away, he cleans all of the impurity from us. So that is Bhaktavatsal. And finally, another dimension of understanding Bhaktavatsal is that Krishna is a cowherd boy. And especially in his younger Leela, in when he's at that younger age, he is entrusted not just with the care of cows, but first with the care of calves. And Lord Krishna is exceedingly affectionate towards his calves. The stories of Lord Krishna's relationship with his calves, of Gopal. Gopal means one who palan, who cares for, who protects and cares for and maintains his calves. He's so affectionate towards his calves. I want to just read a little bit, just in closing. What is the relationship between Krishna and his cows, or his calves? Krishna has, according to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he arranges his cows into 108 groups distinguished by their color and form. And he uses a string of 108 jewel beads. Thus, being called by name, the cows come forward, and Krishna, thinking that when it is time to bring them back from the forest, none should be forgotten, is counting them and calling them by name on his jewel beads. What an amazing image. If you've ever been in Vrindavan and Vraj, there's a place called Ter Kadamba. And Ter Kadamba, Ter means count. And Ter Kadamba is the place where Krishna counts his cows and his calves. He sits there and he takes this jeweled necklace, this beads, this mala that he wears with 108 glass beads, and he does japa. Right? Isn't that amazing? Our process, our main practice is to chant the holy names of the Lord, to call out to the Lord, especially in this practice of japa, calling out, using our beads as a way of counting these names and calling out the names of Krishna. And what is Krishna doing eternally in the spiritual world, eternally, every day? And as part of our meditation, we can reflect on and meditate on this particular beautiful time of day when it's time to bring the cows home. What is Krishna doing? He's doing his japa. He's making the time. What a powerful encouragement for us to maybe see our own practice of mantra meditation, of japa, of chanting on our beads in a new light, that what we're doing, it actually is what Krishna is doing. The way we're calling out to Krishna, Krishna is calling out to each of us. As Bhaktavatsa, he sees each and every one of us, unique as we are. Each one of Krishna's cows, no two cows are alike in Krishna's, in Nanda Maharaj's herd, and the herd of cows and calves that Krishna is entrusted with. No two are alike. Each one is an individual. Each one Krishna loves for that particular cow, that particular calf, that particular calf's qualities and attributes. Krishna knows them. He knows them by name. He knows them by quality. He calls out to each and every one because, as Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, he thinks to himself, not one should be forgotten. This is Bhaktavatsa. This is the Lord as Bhaktavatsa. He thinks to himself, not one of my precious children, my precious souls, my devotees, my bhaktas should be forgotten. So I will sit, I will call their names, I will protect them, I will personally carry them over any difficulty. I will make the ocean of difficulties no more significant than the amount of water in the hoof print made by one of my calves. This is a love I have for my bhaktas. He's just waiting for us. So let us take this as our inspiration. This is so hope-giving for us when we sit down to do japa, when we go about our days, when we face challenges and difficult situations, when we feel like perhaps there's no hope for us even. Let this be our hope, that Krishna is Bhaktavatsal, that he will carry us over, that he will protect us. He has promised it. Let us have trust in his promise. So thank you so much. I didn't intend to speak quite this much, but I got a little caught up in the moment. So here we are. We have just a few minutes left. I know some of us have a hard stop at 8, and actually I also need to leave just about at 8 o'clock. So we can maybe take just a few questions or comments. And perhaps, let me see. I think I see Athena's hand, so maybe we can start there.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranams. What a treat this morning. You're one of my favorite speakers, so I was so excited to see you on screen. Haribo.
Haribo, thank you so much. Thank you for your encouragement.
Wonderful session as always, always so nourishing and educational and informative. I did have one main question, and I had a few clarifying items that hopefully makes my question clear. So we know that Krishna or the Lord is merciful as Rupa, Virat Rupa, as Kala Rupa, even to the demons. So the Lord is merciful. But how do we identify the difference between that type of mercy and the mercy that he gives to Bhaktavatsa, this quality of Bhaktavatsa to his bhaktas? And I guess the key question really is, what is the definition of bhakta? Is bhakta synonymous with devotee, synonymous with believer, synonymous with follower, so that it applies in all religions and traditions? And in my mind, though, I try to relate, when I have interfaith discussions, the key difference is that even though Krishna or God is the supreme majesty, we try to relate in a very, very intimate way. Therefore, we receive that extra affection. But I don't know if that's my conception here, that's that one would receive bhakta, or in the kind of a bhakta vatsal, even if you do approach the Lord as the supreme majesty, as say in Islam, and sometimes even in Christianity. And you did give the example of Ganendra, and we can think of, say, Prahlad, which is not Krishna, but I don't know if that's still different, say, from a believer and follower, as they're quote unquote called in other traditions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful questions. So I'm just going to try to answer briefly. I think there's a couple of ways of understanding this. So when we say Bhaktavatsal, my understanding and my, you can call it realization or my reflection on this is that it is meant to be in the broadest sense of the word. Just like, again, to use this analogy of the herd of cows and calves, every cow in that herd, Krishna has that vatsal for, that vatsalya for. Krishna is bhakta vatsal for, whether or not they are, just like sometimes you go to like a farm. We went to Gita Nagari and we saw the cows have personality. Some of the cows are a little obstinate and stubborn. Some of them come very nicely into the barn when it's time for milking. Others maybe go here and there and they need to be pulled a little bit. So whether one is, aligned with and coming very nicely, coming close to Krishna, or whether one of those cows or calves is being a little mischievous or a little distracted and is somewhere else, Krishna loves them. Krishna has that affection for them. Krishna's calling. And again, as Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, Krishna's thinking, may not even one cow or calf be forgotten. So to me, that means all of Krishna's children, whatever external identifiers, whatever religious identifications or cultural identifications or whatever they may have, even whatever behavior they may have in the particular moment, that's in one sense inconsequential to Krishna. That Bhakta Vatsal applies across the board. To the question though of kind of this majesty and the intimacy, there's Bhakta Vatsal. Bhakta Vatsal is also there in the majesty. So many of these stories, for instance, don't necessarily involve the form of Krishna as, Vrajendra Nandana, Brajraj Krishna in Vrindavan. Some of them are very majestic forms like Nrsingadev, or like, the Lord appearing on, to rescue Gajendra, coming in this very majestic kind of Vishnu form, or Krishna, in Dwarka Lila. And so there's the majesty, but that love is still there. That protective instinct is still there. So I don't see any real kind of contradiction. But perhaps from our point of view, when we come more into that intimate space, that mood of Vrindavan, then we just have more access to appreciate that Bhakta Vatsal quality. So I hope that's helpful. I'm seeing that it's actually past 8 o'clock. So shall we bring it to a close there, or?
What is the difference between the mercy that Krishna is showing to his devotees and common folk? What's the difference? Emily is asking.
So the difference between so we can say both are manifestations of Bhaktavatsa. Let me just kind of invoke another analogy. I know I'm mixing metaphors or analogies here, but let me invoke another analogy. This is my understanding, where Krishna is present, for instance, as this verse in this purport says, as Paramatma, as Supersoul. So in that form, he's showing mercy to all living beings, all living entities. But what is the nature of Paramatma? The nature of Paramatma is that he witnesses, that he gives guidance, but that also he doesn't interfere with our free will. So the way I like to think of it, the analogy I like to use, some of you may have heard me, say this before, use this analogy, is if you're using a navigation device, or you're using, let's say, like Google Maps on your phone or something like this, and you're driving, the navigation system, the GPS, it is giving guidance, it's giving some direction. Now, it's up to us whether we listen to it or not. And if we don't listen to it, what happens? Right? Sometimes we are not paying attention, or maybe we think we know better, or whatever it is, for whatever reason, either advertently or inadvertently, we don't listen to the direction being given by the GPS. So what does it do? Does it get angry with us? Does it argue with us? No, what is it? It simply reroutes, it recalculates. It says, okay, now I'm going to direct you from this new place. Now, that doesn't mean that, that anything and everything we do will have the same consequences. We may, it may add 15 minutes to our journey because we missed the exit we were supposed to take, and now it's recalculated. Now it's going to be a longer and more circuitous route. But that's the nature of the GPS, that it's offering guidance, right? Again, this is just an analogy. It's offering guidance, and it's up to us whether we take the guidance or not. And it's, if we want to look at it as mercy, or grace, the mercy or grace of the GPS is that it simply continues to recalculate and continues to give us guidance. That's wonderful. That's a different experience, though, than if I'm sitting in the car and I'm driving, and my friend Gail is sitting next to me, and Gail is giving me guidance. Gail is telling me which way to go, and Gail sees that I'm maybe going to miss the exit. So what does Gail do? She tells me, she says, Prabhu, you're going to miss the exit. I don't want you to do that. I want you to get there on time. I want you to I want you to take the best route possible. So Gail will go out of her way, or she might see that I'm getting distracted and she'll shake me a little bit. She might see that I'm getting sleepy. A GPS can't wake you up if you're getting sleepy, but she sees I'm getting sleepy. She says, Prabhu, wake up. You're going to miss, the exit. Let me talk to you. Let me keep you awake in some way. Right? She can have a conversation with me. So there's guidance, but there's so much more. There's friendship, there's love, there's care, there's attention. There's a willingness, even in some extraordinary circumstances, there's a willingness even to interfere with my, apparent free will to take control. Maybe Gail, in some extraordinary situation, will grab the wheel from me and pull it, so I don't drive into a ditch, or so I don't, right? Again, it's an analogy, but you get my point, right? So there's a fundamental difference between the kind of guidance, that's also mercy, that's being given by Paramatma, but it's up to us how we access it, how we listen. It's not that same personal relationship that is available when we turn to Bhagavan, when we turn to Krishna in this mood. They're both Bhaktavatsa, but there's a different nature to it. And I hope that's helpful.
Thank you, Prabhu. I'm so glad you went for this analogy. You're famous for it. So many devotees know you for this analogy, myself included. I remember that class you gave the other day at the Bhakti Center. You were really explaining that analogy in a very profound way. Thank you for that. And the overall class was very hope-giving. I like to point how this Bhaktavatsa principle applies very broadly. I really like that. That's very hope-giving. Thank you for interpreting this principle. in a broad way. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for this opportunity to share some reflections and to meditate on this wonderful quality of Krishna.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
And
We'll
I
see
would
you.
definitely not let you miss the exit, Prabhu.
Thank you for always keeping me out of a ditch, Kel.
Yeah, Bhima
Hare
Prabhu
Krishna.
says that his wife punched him in the jaw when he was not on the George Washington Bridge. Sometimes Krishna jacks you in the jaw. So I hope
That's
Gail
wonderful.
will to Bhakta Prabhu.
Wonderful. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Bhaktavatsa Krishna Bhagavan ki jai. Song with the Bhakta ki jai.
Venkata Prabhu ki jai. Thank you, Prabhu. Beautiful
Thank
class.
you.
Hare
Hare
Krishna. Have a
Krishna.
wonderful day, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. See you again tomorrow. Hare Bol.